The scout ship Whisper of Stars moved through the empty darkness of space like a small fish swimming through a black ocean. Commander stood at the center of the bridge, her four eyes watching the screens around her. Her gray skin glowed softly in the blue light of the control panels. It was a quiet day. It was supposed to be a quiet day. "Commander, I am getting strange readings from Sector 7, said N, the young officer sitting at the sensor station. His voice was calm, but his fingers moved nervously across the controls. Walked toward him. Her long legs made soft clicking sounds on the metal floor. "What kind of readings?" "Ships, Commander, many ships." N looked up at her with wide eyes. "The computer is still counting them." The main screen flickered and changed. Numbers appeared and kept growing. 100, 200, 300 ships. They were coming out of a region of space that every map said was empty, dead space, nothing there. Felt her heart's beat faster. She had been a scout commander for 20 years. She had seen pirates and smugglers and lost vessels, but she had never seen anything like this. "Can you identify them?" she asked. N worked his controls. The screen showed the shape of the ships. They were strange, angular, sharp edges and flat surfaces. They looked like weapons given the ability to fly. Nothing like the smooth, curved ships that every species in the Galactic Concord used. "The computer is searching the database," N said. Then his face went pale. "Commander, it found a match. These ships, they are human." The word hung in the air like poison. Everyone on the bridge stopped moving. Felt cold spread through her body. Humans, she remembered the stories from the Academy. 300 years ago, the Galactic Concord had found a small blue planet filled with a young species. The species was primitive but aggressive. First contact went wrong. War followed. The humans fought with terrible fury even though they had no chance of winning. They used nuclear weapons on their own cities rather than surrender them. They crashed their own ships into conquered vessels. They fought until there was almost nothing left. The Conquered won, but the victory was expensive. So they made a decision. The humans were too dangerous to destroy completely, but too dangerous to let free. They built a wall of defense stations around the human system. They cut off all contact. They hoped the humans would stay trapped forever. But now 300 ships were floating in front of, and they were very far from that prison. "They are moving in formation," said Haz, the navigation officer. Her voice was shaking. "Perfect formation. I have never seen ships move together so smoothly." Watched the screen. The human fleet moved like one creature, not 300 separate ships. There was no communication between them that the sensors could detect. No radio signals. No light beams. Nothing. They moved in complete silence. "Open a channel to Concord High Command," ordered. "Maximum priority, emergency signal." N, the communications officer, worked quickly. "Channel open, Commander." Spoke clearly, keeping her voice steady even though fear was crawling up her spine. "This is Commander of the scout vessel Whisper of Stars. We have detected a fleet of human origin in Sector 7. I repeat, a human fleet, 300 or more vessels. They have escaped the quarantine zone. They are heading toward conquered space. We need immediate response. Please advise." She waited, static filled the speakers. Then a voice came back, distant and confused. "Scout vessel, please confirm. Did you say human?" "Confirmed. Human fleet, large, moving fast. They will reach the inner systems in." The lights flickered. "Stop talking." She looked around the bridge. Every screen flashed once. Then again. The hum of the engines, a sound so constant that she usually forgot it existed, began to fade. "What is happening?" she demanded. N was hitting his controls, but nothing responded. "Systems are failing, Commander. All systems." The lights flickered a third time and then went out. Complete darkness fell over the bridge. Could hear her crew breathing, fast and scared. She could hear her own hearts pounding in her chest. Emergency lights should have come on. They did not. Backup power should have activated. It did not. The Whisper of Stars went completely dead. No lights, no engines, no life support. Nothing. They floated in the darkness like a stone sinking in water. "Everyone stay calm," said, but her voice sounded weak in the black emptiness around her. She moved carefully toward the viewport, the large window at the front of the bridge. Her eyes, designed for seeing in low light, slowly adjusted. She could see the stars outside, cold and distant, and she could see the human fleet. The ships were still moving, their lights were still on, they had power, they were fine. Only the conquered ship was dead. Understood then with horrible clarity what had happened. The humans had done something to them, without touching them, without shooting them. The humans had reached across space and turned off their ship like a person turning off a lamp. She watched one ship separate from the human fleet. It was small and fast. It turned and began moving toward them. "Commander," N's voice came from somewhere in the darkness. "What do we do?" Had no answer. She watched the human ship grow larger in the viewport. It was coming for them. They had sent a message to the conquered, but she did not know if it had arrived before their systems died. They might be alone out here, alone and helpless. The human ship came closer, could see its shape now. It looked like a blade cutting through the darkness. She stood at the viewport and waited for whatever would happen next. For the first time in her long career, Commander did not have a plan. She only had fear. And the darkness around her was very, very cold. The cold crept into the ship slowly, like water filling a sinking boat. Without power, there was no heat. The whisper of stars was becoming a frozen tomb. Gathered her crew in the center of the bridge, 6 of them in total, standing close together for warmth. Their breath made small clouds in the air. The only light came from the stars outside the viewport. "We need to stay calm," said. Her voice was stronger now. She was a commander. Her crew needed her. "The emergency beacon may have sent our position before we lost power. Help could be coming." "How long before we freeze?" asked Haz. The navigation officer was hugging herself, her thin arms wrapped tight around her body. Did not want to answer that question. An hour, maybe 2. Their species did not handle cold well. The young communications officer, suddenly spoke. "Commander, I found something strange before the power died. I have been thinking about it." "What did you find?" "Our systems did not break. I saw the readings. Everything was working perfectly. Then everything stopped. But there was no damage, no attack, no power failure." N paused. "It was like our computers just decided to stop working. All at the same time, all at once." The crew exchanged looks. They did not understand. "That is not possible," said N. "Computers do not decide things." "I know," N said quietly, "but that is what I saw." A sound interrupted them. Metal against metal, something hitting the outside of the ship. Everyone went silent. They listened. The sound came again, closer this time. Something was attaching to their hull. "The human ship," whispered. They heard new sounds now. The grinding of machinery, the hiss of air escaping. Someone was cutting through their airlock. Someone was coming inside. "What do we do?" N's voice was high and thin with fear. Looked around. They had no weapons that would work without power. They had no way to fight. They had no way to run. "We wait," she said. "We see what they want." Footsteps, heavy footsteps in the corridor outside the bridge. Slow and steady, not rushing, not worried. The humans were taking their time. The footsteps grew louder, closer, counted them. 1 set of feet, just 1 person. The bridge door was supposed to open automatically, but there was no power. For a moment, nothing happened. Then there was a loud crack and the door was forced open from the outside. Cold air rushed in, even colder than before. A figure stood in the doorway. It was tall, taller than had expected. The human wore armor that was completely black, no lights, no shine. It seemed to absorb the darkness around it. The helmet covered the entire head and the faceplate was like a mirror. Saw herself reflected in that faceplate. She saw her crew, huddled together like frightened children. She saw how small they looked. The human stepped into the bridge. Each footstep was heavy and solid. The armor made soft mechanical sounds as the human moved. Notice the weapons on the human's belt, a gun of some kind, a blade, other tools she did not recognize. The human stopped in the center of the bridge and looked at each of them in turn. The mirrored faceplate revealed nothing. Then the human reached up and removed the helmet. It was a female, knew enough about human biology to tell. The female had short dark hair and a face marked by small lines and old scars. Her eyes were brown like dirt or wood. They were calm, steady. Looking at those eyes felt like she was looking at a deep pool of water that hid something dangerous beneath the surface. "I am Captain Myra Vance," the human said. Her voice was clear and strong. "Terran Reclamation Fleet." Stepped forward. Her legs wanted to shake, but she forced them to be still. "I am commander of the Galactic Concord. You have committed an act of war by disabling my vessel." The human Vance tilted her head slightly. A small smile appeared on her face, but it did not reach her eyes. "An act of war," Vance repeated. "Your people surrounded our planet with weapons. You trapped us in our own solar system for 300 years. You tried to make us forget that other stars existed." She paused. "And you call this an act of war?" Did not know how to respond. The human was not wrong. "What do you want?" asked. Vance looked around the dark bridge. She looked at the frightened crew, the dead screens, the frost forming on the walls. Then she looked back at. "We want you to carry a message," Vance said. "The quarantine is over. We are coming out, and the Concord will listen to what we have to say. You cannot threaten the entire Concord. You are one fleet." Vance smiled again, and this time it was different, colder. "Commander, look at your ship. Look at what we did without firing a weapon, without touching you. We turned off your technology like blowing out a candle." She stepped closer. "Every species in your Concord uses the same basic technology, the same computers, the same power systems, the same designs that you have used for thousands of years. We spent 300 years studying that technology, finding its weaknesses, building something different." Felt her hearts go cold. "You weaponized our own technology against us. We had 3 centuries with nothing to do but think and build and plan," Vance said. "What did you think we were doing in that cage you put us in? Crying." She reached into a pouch on her belt and pulled out a small object, a data chip. She held it out too. "Our demands are on this chip: recognition as an equal power, reparations for 300 years of imprisonment, a seat on your council." Vance's eyes were hard as stone. "Take it to your leaders. Tell them what you saw here. Tell them we were merciful today." Took the chip. It felt heavy in her hand. "And if they refuse?" she asked. Vance turned and walked toward the door. She stopped at the threshold and looked back. "We shut down one ship today. We can shut down 1,000. We can shut down every ship, every station, every city that uses Concord technology." She put her helmet back on. The mirrored faceplate hid her face once more. "Tell them to choose wisely." She walked out. Her footsteps faded down the corridor. Minutes later, the lights flickered on. The engines hummed back to life. Heat began to flow through the ship again. Stood in the center of the bridge, holding the data chip, staring at the viewport. The human ship was detaching from their hull. The human fleet was already moving away, continuing its journey toward the heart of conquered space. "Commander," Anne asked quietly, "what do we do?" Looked at the chip in her hand. She thought about Vance's eyes. She thought about the 300 ships moving in perfect silence. She thought about 300 years of imprisonment and what that might do to a species. "We do what she said," answered. "We deliver the message." She hoped the Concord would listen. She feared they would not. The grand chamber of the Galactic Concord was the largest room had ever seen. It was built into a massive space station at the center of civilized space. The ceiling was so high it seemed to disappear into darkness. Thousands of seats rose in circles around a central platform. and in those seats sat the representatives of 47 species. Stood on the central platform, feeling very small. She had told her story 3 times already, once to her direct commanders, once to the conquered intelligence office. Now she was telling it to the entire assembly. Holographic images floated in the air around her, showing the recordings from her ship, the human fleet, the silent approach, the moment when everything went dark. When she finished speaking, the chamber exploded with noise. Representatives shouted at each other. Some demanded war. Some demanded peace. Some simply screamed in fear. The sound was overwhelming, bouncing off the walls and ceiling until could not understand any single voice. The high speaker, an ancient being named, raised his staff and struck the floor 3 times. The sound cut through the noise like a blade, and slowly the chamber fell quiet. "We will have order," said. His voice was thin with age but still carried authority. "Admiral Ash of the Dominion has requested to speak." A figure rose from the seats. Admiral Ash was tall and broad, covered in thick green scales. His species was known for their military strength. They had conquered 100 worlds before joining the conquered. "This is simple," Ash said. His voice was deep and confident. "The humans have built a fleet. We have seen fleets before. We will crush them like we have crushed every enemy that challenged us." Murmurs of agreement came from many seats. "They have one trick," Ash continued. "Some kind of weapon that disables power systems. We will adapt. We will shield our ships, and then we will destroy them." He looked down with contempt in his yellow eyes. "This scout commander was caught by surprise. Our military will not be." Wanted to argue, but she did not have the rank to speak without permission. Another voice rose from the assembly. "The Admiral speaks with great confidence about an enemy he has never faced." The chamber turned to look at the speaker. It was Ambassador of the Collective. They were one of the oldest species in the galaxy. Looked like a tree that had learned to walk, tall and thin, with bark-like skin and branches instead of arms. His eyes were deep pools of amber light. "My people remember the first war with humanity," said. "I was young then. I watched the reports come in. A primitive species with slow ships and crude weapons. We expected to defeat them in weeks." He paused. "The war lasted 11 years. The chamber was silent now. "They fought us for every planet, every moon, every rock floating in space. When they could not win, they destroyed. When we captured their cities, we found them empty. The humans had killed themselves rather than surrender. When we disabled their ships, they crashed those ships into ours." His voice grew heavy. "We won, but the cost was terrible, and that was when they had nothing. Now they have had 300 years to prepare." Admiral Ash made a dismissive sound. "Old stories from an old species. They have grown weak. They have not. My fleet will handle this threat." "Your fleet uses the same technology that the humans disabled on that scout ship," said. "What will you do when your weapons do not fire, when your shields do not rise, when your engines go silent?" "We will adapt." "In the middle of battle, against an enemy that has spent 3 centuries planning for this exact moment." The argument continued. Other voices joined in. Some supported Ash. Some supported. The chamber became loud again, filled with shouting and accusations. Watched it all from the central platform. She thought about Captain Vance's eyes, the calm certainty in them, the complete lack of fear. Finally, the high speaker struck his staff again. "We will vote. All those in favor of military action against the human fleet." Hands and tentacles and wings rose throughout the chamber, a clear majority. All those opposed raised his branch arm. A few others joined him, not nearly enough. "The motion carries," the high speaker announced. "Admiral Ash, you are authorized to assemble the combined fleet and engage the human forces." Ash bowed his massive head. "It will be my honor to protect the conquered." The chamber began to empty. Representatives filed out, talking quietly among themselves. The crisis had been addressed. The military would handle it. Everything would return to normal. Remained on the platform watching them go. She felt sick. Ambassador approached her. Up close, he smelled like old wood and ancient earth. "You saw something out there," said quietly. "Something that scared you." Nodded. The human captain. She was not afraid of us, not even a little. When she looked at me, it was like a hunter looking at prey. She knew she had already won. She was just waiting for us to realize it. Made a sound like wind through leaves. A sigh. The conquered has not faced a real threat in 1,000 years. They have forgotten what it means to be afraid. He looked toward the exit where Ash had gone. The Admiral thinks he will win because he has always won before. He does not understand that this is different. "Can you stop them?" asked. "No, the vote is done. The fleet will go." Amber eyes were sad. "All I can do is hope that somehow the humans will show mercy again." He walked away, leaving alone on the platform. She looked up at the holographic images still floating in the air. The human fleet, frozen in place. 300 ships moving in perfect silence. Far away in the depths of space, those ships were still moving, still coming. And now the conquered was sending 10,000 warships to meet them. Thought about what Captain Vance had said. Tell them we were merciful, this time. She wondered if there would be a next time. She wondered if the conquered fleet would ever come home. Somewhere in her mind, she already knew the answer. She left the chamber and began the long walk back to her ship. Whatever happened next, she did not want to be here when the news arrived. Admiral Ash stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Fury of the Dominion, and smiled. Behind him, through the massive viewport, stretched the greatest fleet ever assembled in the history of the Galactic Conquered. 10,000 warships, battle cruisers and destroyers and carriers and frigates, ships from 47 different species, all united under his command. It was a beautiful sight. It was the might of civilization made visible. "Admiral, we are approaching the drop point," his first officer reported. "Human-controlled space is 1 light minute away." "Good." Ash clasped his clawed hands behind his back. "All ships prepare for combat, weapons hot, shields at maximum. The moment we exit hyperspace, I want firing solutions on every human vessel." Confirmations came back from across the fleet. Everything was ready. Ash had spent 2 weeks preparing for this moment. His engineers had worked around the clock, installing new shielding and backup systems to protect against the human weapon that had disabled the scout ship. They had created isolated power cores, redundant computers, and manual overrides for every critical system. The humans had surprised one small scout vessel. They would not surprise the combined fleet. "Jump in 30 seconds, the navigation officer announced. Ash watched the countdown on the main screen. He thought about the glory that awaited him, the admiral who crushed the human threat, the savior of the conquered. His name would be remembered for 1,000 years. 10 seconds. The fleet hummed with energy. Weapons charged, shields glowed. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, jump. The stars stretched and blurred. The ship shuddered as it tore through the fabric of space. Then everything snapped back into focus, and they were there. The human fleet was waiting. Ash felt his smile falter. The humans were not running. They were not hiding. 300 ships sat in perfect formation, directly in the path of the conquered armada. It was like watching a single soldier stand before an entire army. "Admiral, we have targeting solutions," the weapons officer said, "ready to fire on your command." Ash opened his mouth to give the order. He never got the chance. The lights went out. Not just on his ship, on every ship. Across the entire fleet, 10,000 vessels went dark at exactly the same moment. Engines died, weapons powered down, shields collapsed, screens went black. Ash stood frozen in the sudden darkness. His mind could not understand what was happening. This was impossible. They had prepared. They had protected their systems. They had thought of everything. "Report," he demanded. "What is happening? Report." No one answered. The bridge crew was silent, stumbling in the darkness. Emergency lights should have activated. They did not. Backup generators should have kicked in. They did not. All of Ash's preparations, all of his shielding and redundancy, meant nothing. The human weapon had gone through everything like it was not even there. A new fear crept into Ash's mind. Without life support, the air would run out. Without heat, the cold of space would seep in. His crew was already dying. He heard gasping sounds around him, officers struggling to breathe. The air recyclers were offline. Carbon dioxide was building up with every breath. "No," Ash whispered, "this is not possible." But it was possible. It was happening. The greatest fleet in conquered history was dying without a single shot being fired. Through the viewport, Ash could see the human ships. Their lights were still on. They moved slowly through the field of dead vessels, like predators walking through a graveyard they had created. Some of his crew were screaming now. Others were crying. One officer was praying to gods that Ash had never believed in. A voice cut through the chaos. It came from speakers that should have been dead, broadcasting on a frequency that should not have worked. "This is Captain Myra Vance of the Terran Reclamation Fleet." The voice was calm, steady. There was no anger in it, no triumph, just simple, terrible certainty. "You were warned, you chose not to listen. This is the result." Ash wanted to respond, to threaten, to negotiate, but his communication systems were dead. He could only listen. "We could let your fleet die here," Vance continued. 10,000 ships, millions of lives. It would be easy. You would drift in the darkness until the cold took you or the air ran out. No one would come to save you. No one would even know what happened until it was too late. The words hit Ash like physical blows. She was right. No distress signal had gone out. The conquered would not know their fleet was in trouble. Help was not coming. "But we are not here for revenge," Vance said. "We are here to deliver a message, so we will give you a choice." A small human ship detached from the fleet and moved toward the fury of the Dominion. It stopped beside the viewport. Ash could see the cockpit, could see a human pilot looking back at him. "Accept our terms. Full recognition of human sovereignty. Reparations. A seat on your council. Agree to this and we will restore your power. Your fleet will survive. Your people will go home." Ash stared at the human ship. His pride screamed at him to refuse, to die with honor rather than surrender to these primitives. But his pride was not the one gasping for air. His pride was not the one whose crew was dying around him. "If you agree, turn on a light, any light. Manual activation only, a torch, a flame, anything. We will see it. We will know." The broadcast ended. Silence returned. Ash stood in the darkness, surrounded by the sounds of his dying crew. He thought about glory. He thought about honor. He thought about his name being remembered for 1,000 years. Then he thought about the young officers around him who would never see their families again. He thought about the millions of crew members across the fleet, all waiting to die in the cold darkness. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small emergency flare, standard equipment for every officer. He had carried it for 20 years and never used it. His hands were shaking. He pulled the ignition cord. The flare burst into bright red light, filling the bridge with color. Through the viewport he saw other lights appearing, on other ships, across the fleet, red and orange and white. Thousands of tiny flames in the darkness like stars being born. The fleet was surrendering. Ash dropped the flare and fell to his knees. His eyes were wet with tears, not from fear, not from relief, from shame. The lights came back on. The engines hummed to life. Air began to flow. Across 10,000 ships, systems returned to normal. The humans had won without firing a single shot. And Ash knew that everything had changed. The galaxy would never be the same. The news reached the Grand Chamber before the fleet returned. 10,000 ships disabled in 4 seconds. The greatest military force in conquered history, brought to its knees without a battle. Admiral Ash had surrendered. The humans were coming. Watch the chaos from the viewing gallery above the chamber floor. Representatives screamed at each other. Some demanded new attacks. Others demanded immediate surrender. A few simply sat in shocked silence, unable to process what had happened. The High Speaker tried to restore order, but his staff struck the floor again and again without effect. The conquered was falling apart. Then the lights flickered. Everyone went silent. Every eye turned upward toward the ceiling, toward the source of light and power. The memory of report was fresh in their minds. The human weapon that turned off ships like candles. Was it happening here? Was the grand chamber next? The lights steadied. A new voice filled the room, broadcast through every speaker. This is Captain Myra Vance of the Terran Reclamation Fleet. We have entered orbit around your station. We request permission to send a diplomatic delegation. Please respond. The message was polite, formal, but everyone understood what it really meant. The humans were here, and there was nothing the conquered could do to stop them. The High Speaker raised his staff one more time. This time, the chamber listened. Send them, said. His voice was tired, defeated. Let them come. An hour later, stood in the chamber and watched history unfold. The human delegation entered through the main doors. There were 12 of them, dressed in simple gray uniforms. They carried no weapons that could see. They walked with calm confidence, their eyes taking in the massive chamber and the thousands of alien representatives watching them. At the front of the group was Captain Vance. Recognized her immediately. The short dark hair, the weathered face, the calm eyes that had looked at her in the darkness of the whisper of stars, the woman who had turned off her ship with a thought. Vance walked to the central platform and stopped. She looked around the chamber, her gaze moving from face to face, species to species. When her eyes passed over in the gallery, she paused for just a moment. A small nod, an acknowledgement. Then she spoke. 317 years ago, your ancestors found our planet. We were young, curious, excited to learn that we were not alone in the universe. Her voice was calm, but it carried to every corner of the chamber. You responded to our excitement with fear, to our curiosity with violence. When we fought back, you called us dangerous. You surrounded our solar system with weapons and left us to rot. The chamber was completely silent. You thought we would forget. You thought we would give up. You thought that after 3 centuries you would open our cage and find broken animals ready to obey. Vance smiled, and there was something cold in it. You were wrong. She walked slowly around the platform, her boots making soft sounds on the floor. We spent those 300 years working, learning, growing. We took apart every piece of your technology that we captured in the war. We studied it, we understood it. And then we built something new, something different, something you cannot understand or stop. She stopped and faced the High Speaker directly. You have 2 choices now. Accept us as equals, give us a seat at your table and learn to live beside us in peace. Or refuse and watch everything you have built go dark. Every ship, every station, every city. We can turn it all off whenever we want. We have proven this. The High Speaker's hands were shaking. You would kill billions. No, Vance said. We would turn off your machines. What happens after that is your choice. We have no desire for genocide. We are not like you. Those words hit hard, could see it in the faces around her. The conquered had tried to trap humanity forever. The humans had responded with mercy. What do you want? The High Speaker asked. What we have always wanted, recognition, respect, a voice in the galaxy. Vance pulled a document from her uniform, real paper, noticed, not a data pad. These are our terms, they are fair, they are final. Sign them and we can begin building something new together. Refuse them and we will leave, but we will take the light with us when we go. She placed the document on the platform and stepped back. The chamber was silent for a long moment. Then slowly the high speaker walked forward. He picked up the document, he read it. His face showed nothing. "These terms are acceptable," he said finally. His voice was barely a whisper, but everyone heard it. A wave of sound moved through the chamber. Relief, fear, anger, hope, all mixed together in a single breath from 1,000 different species. The high speaker signed the document. Other leaders came forward to add their signatures. One by one, the conquered agreed. Humanity was free. Watched from the gallery as history changed below her. She watched Captain Vance accept the signed document and bow slightly to the assembly. She watched the human delegation walk out of the chamber, their mission complete. As Vance passed beneath the gallery, she looked up in Met's eyes one more time. "Commander," she said, "thank you for delivering our message." Did not know what to say. This woman had terrified her, had shown her how powerless the conquered truly was, had changed everything she believed about the galaxy. "What happens now?" asked. Vance considered the question. "Now we learn to live together. It will not be easy. There is too much history between us, too much pain." She paused. "But we have waited 300 years for this chance. We will not waste it." She walked away, joining her delegation at the exit. Stayed in the gallery long after the chamber emptied. She thought about what she had witnessed. The humans had won without violence. They had demanded justice without revenge. They had shown strength through mercy. She had feared them, part of her still did, but now she also respected them. The galaxy had tried to cage them, and they had broken free. The galaxy had tried to destroy them, and they had survived. The galaxy had underestimated them, and they had proven everyone wrong. Thought about the human captain's calm eyes, the certainty in her voice, the patience of a species that had waited 3 centuries for this moment. The greatest weapon, she realized, was not the one that destroyed. It was the one that made destruction unnecessary. The humans understood that. Now the rest of the galaxy would have to learn it too. She left the gallery and walked toward the docking bay where her ship waited. There would be much work to do in the days ahead. A new era was beginning, and she wanted to see where it led. Outside the viewport, she could see the human fleet in orbit around the station. 300 ships, sitting in silence, watching over the galaxy they had just joined. They were not conquerors, they were not destroyers, they were survivors. And now finally they were free.